They say there's a moment, right before it happens, when everything goes quiet. No blaster fire, no warning sirens, no alien translator humming in the background, just silence. That's when you know someone said it. The words that make every species in the galaxy take a step back. Now, you've really pushed it. Simple words, said by humans, in a tone that somehow freezes the air. And for reasons no one fully understands, that's when things always, without fail, go very, very wrong for whoever's on the receiving end. It started as a joke among the alien races. They called it the human threshold. At first, they laughed about it. Humans, they said, were emotional, unpredictable, always quick to anger, but rarely dangerous. They underestimated the strange calm that came right after that line. The one moment when the human face stops showing emotion, the voice drops, and the eyes go still. That was the moment other species learned to stop laughing, because no matter what the odds were, no matter how cornered or outnumbered a human seemed, something always turned in their favor after those words. The story begins on a mining station orbiting the edge of neutral space, a place filled with drifters, traders, and mercenaries from 100 worlds. A deal was supposed to happen there. Simple, routine, nothing special. But as always, when humans were involved, it didn't stay simple for long. One of them stood there, hands bound, face bloodied but calm, surrounded by towering insectoid guards. Across from them was a Threxian warlord, a creature twice their size, its claws clicking with amusement. It leaned closer, voice dripping with arrogance, taunting the human for being weak, for being fragile, for daring to talk back. The guards laughed, their mandibles clattering in cruel rhythm. The human didn't move, didn't flinch. They just breathed slowly, their gaze locked on the warlord's eyes. Then, softly, almost too quietly to hear, they said it. Now you've really pushed it. The laughter stopped. Even the air seemed to thin out. The guards shifted uneasily, though they didn't know why. Every being in the room, from the smallest scavenger to the oldest soldier, felt something instinctive rise inside them, a primal warning. Some species said it was chemical, others said it was instinct, but most agreed it felt like standing near a collapsing star, that eerie, unstoppable pressure before the explosion. The warlord didn't notice. It leaned closer, sneering, thinking the human's words meant nothing. But deep down, a few of the crew knew what was coming. They'd seen it before. They remembered stories of humans who turned hopeless battles into victories, who charged into fire without armor, who fought until the stars themselves seemed to burn with them. What happened next wasn't recorded in any official log. The security cameras cut out, the emergency lights failed, and the next transmission from that station was pure static. But witnesses said they heard it, the echo of something tearing through metal and fear alike. And when rescue teams finally arrived, they found the station in ruins, every alien gone, and one message carved into the control panel in human handwriting: "Don't push it." No one ever figured out exactly what happened that day, but from then on, every species learned the same lesson. When a human says those words, it's not a threat, it's a promise. And somewhere, in the cold dark of space, another voice is about to say it again. After the mining station incident, rumors spread like wildfire across the outer colonies. No one knew exactly what had happened, but the silence from that sector told its own story. Traders whispered that the human didn't just survive. They dismantled an entire crew of mercenaries without a single weapon. Others claimed the warlord's ship was found drifting, every system fried, with no signs of life on board. But the most unsettling part wasn't the destruction. It was the message carved into steel, a reminder that something deep within humans woke up when they were pushed too far. Across the galaxy, species that once saw humans as allies or curiosities began to reconsider. Reports surfaced from distant outposts, small incidents, strange coincidences, all following the same pattern. A dispute, a confrontation, a few angry words, and then that line. Now you've really pushed it. What followed was chaos. It didn't matter whether the human was a soldier, a scientist, or a miner. Something in them shifted when those words left their lips. The calm that followed was almost unnatural. And the results, every time, were impossible to explain. Governments began to study it. Scientists from the C-Rune Collective and the Verity Council conducted secret experiments to understand the human threshold response. They ran simulations, studied neural patterns, even interviewed humans themselves, but got nowhere. The subjects would laugh when asked about it, shrugging it off like it was nothing. "Guess it's just how we are," one pilot said. But there was something behind those smiles, something even they didn't seem to fully understand. On a remote transport ship, one of the few humans working among alien crew members sat quietly in the engine room, tuning a plasma coil. They were new to the sector, trying to keep a low profile. Most of the crew avoided them, not out of hatred, but out of a kind of wary respect. They had all heard the stories. Some had even seen the aftermath firsthand. And while no one said it aloud, everyone knew the unspoken rule: never push a human too far. Still, curiosity is a dangerous thing. The ship's captain, a reptilian trader named Theros, believed the stories were exaggerated. He saw humans as resourceful, but hardly mythical. One evening, during a heated argument over a failed trade deal, Theros slammed a clawed hand on the table and demanded answers. The human just stared back, quiet and steady. The tension in the room thickened. Crew members glanced at each other nervously. One of them subtly reached for the emergency beacon, just in case. Theros sneered. "You think your kind scares me?" he said, his tone half daring, half mocking. The human didn't respond. They simply exhaled, slow and deep, eyes locked on his. The silence stretched until even the ship's hum seemed to fade. Then, softly, the words came again. "Now you've really pushed it." Every being in that room felt their stomach twist, like gravity had shifted. No one moved. No one breathed. Somewhere deep in the ship, an engine monitor flickered. It wasn't rage they saw in the human's face. It was focus. Cold, unshakable focus. The kind that made you realize that every survival story you'd ever heard about humanity might not be exaggeration at all. What came next wasn't violence. Not yet. But systems began to fail one by one, lights dimming, alarms flickering, pressure dropping. It was as if the ship itself was responding to those words, bending to the human's quiet resolve. Theros took a step back, for the first time unsure. The others just stared, hearts pounding. Outside, the void of space loomed silent and endless, and in that silence, every creature aboard realized the same thing. Something ancient had just awakened, and it wore a human face. The ship drifted in the darkness, half its systems flickering in and out. Emergency lights painted the walls in dull red, and every alien on board moved carefully, like any sudden motion might set something off. The humans sat quietly near the engine core, their face calm but unreadable. No one dared to speak first. The captain paced in silence, glancing toward the control panel that showed erratic readings. The power grid was fluctuating, navigation unresponsive. It was as if the entire ship was caught between running and freezing. In the control room, the crew whispered among themselves. They spoke of old stories, the threshold incidents, where humans had faced impossible odds and somehow turned everything around. A technician from the Verity homeworld said she once saw a human pilot steer a crippled fighter through a collapsing wormhole. Another remembered a mining accident where a single human carried 3 injured aliens across a molten bridge before it collapsed. Those tales had always felt exaggerated. But now, trapped in this eerie half-light, they no longer seemed so impossible. The human wasn't speaking, but something in the air had changed. Every breath felt heavier. Theros watched them from across the room, frustration mixing with unease. He wanted to take control back, to prove that his authority still meant something. But when he tried to order the human to fix the systems, his voice cracked halfway through. He couldn't explain why. Meanwhile, deeper inside the ship, the secondary crew worked to stabilize life support. One of them, a quiet insectoid engineer named Crix, couldn't shake a growing curiosity. They had studied human psychology at an academy once, fascinated by the species' strange emotional resilience. Humans could feel fear, pain, loss, and still move forward as if powered by something unseen. Now, as the ship's air systems sputtered, Crix found themselves staring at the human through the glass panel, wondering what exactly triggered that transformation from calm to unstoppable. On the other side of the ship, the distress signal had finally gone out, bouncing across the relay network toward the nearest patrol hub. But rescue wouldn't arrive for hours, maybe longer. Until then, they were alone, with a human who seemed perfectly comfortable in chaos. Tharos tried again to reassert control. "You caused this," he said sharply. "You'll fix it. Now." The human looked up slowly, expression unchanged. "I didn't cause anything. You just stopped listening." Their tone was quiet, not angry, but the words carried weight, the kind that made everyone else step back again. Outside the viewport, something flickered, a faint shimmer in the void. It looked almost like a ship, but then it vanished. The sensors couldn't identify it. Crix leaned closer to the console, antennae twitching. "Captain, we might not be alone out there," they said. Tharos turned, scanning the blackness. "Pirates? Or worse," another whispered. The humans stood, brushing dust off their hands. "Whatever it is," they said softly, "it's coming closer." A low hum filled the ship as proximity alarms began to pulse faintly, their tones distorted. Every set of eyes turned toward the viewport again, where faint blue lights flickered in the distance, moving closer, too precise to be debris. The human took a slow breath, steady and unafraid. "You really should have listened sooner," they said. Tharos didn't answer. He didn't need to. The fear in his eyes said everything. The ship was breaking down. Something unknown was approaching. And the one person who seemed ready for it was the same one he'd just pushed too far. And somewhere in that deep, silent dark, something answered back. The ship's hull shuddered as the lights outside grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. Every being on board froze where they stood, watching the glow spread across the viewport. It wasn't a single vessel. It was several, drifting silently into formation, their outlines sharp against the black. No identification beacons, no signatures. Just cold, mechanical precision. The kind that never meant anything good. Tharos's throat tightened. "Shields up," he barked. But nothing happened. The console stayed dark, unresponsive. The power grid was dead in half the ship, and the other half flickered weakly, like a dying pulse. The human didn't look at the approaching ships right away. Instead, they closed their eyes, as if listening to something beyond sound. Then they said quietly, "They're not here for you. They're here for what's inside this ship." The crew exchanged glances, panic creeping in. "What are you talking about?" Crix asked. The human opened their eyes, gaze steady. "This ship isn't carrying ore or parts. It's carrying data. Something stolen. Something they can't let leave this system." Tharos spun toward them, disbelief turning into fury. "You think you know what's going on here?" The human didn't flinch. "I know they're not going to talk first." Before Tharos could respond, the first blast hit. The sound was deep and bone-shaking, like thunder rolling through metal. The ship lurched violently, alarms screaming to life. Loose cables sparked, panels burst open, and one of the outer corridors was sealed automatically to stop decompression. The crew scrambled for control, shouting over each other, their voices lost in the chaos. The human moved fast, too fast for someone unarmed. They pulled open a service hatch, climbed down into the maintenance tunnel, and started rerouting circuits manually. Sparks flew as they worked, fingers steady despite the shaking hull. Crix followed, shouting updates through the comms, but even their calm logic was breaking apart under the strain. 2 ships closing in, they're locking magnetic clamps. Theros gripped the console, his claws digging into the surface. They'll board us, he muttered. We can't fight that many. The human's voice came through the intercom, low and focused. You don't need to fight them. Just hold the line until I finish this. Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights dimmed completely, plunging everything into red emergency glow. The crew's breathing echoed in the dark corridors. Somewhere near the cargo bay, metal groaned, the sound of boarding clamps locking tight. Footsteps followed, heavy, synchronized, metallic. Whoever was coming didn't rush. They moved with the patience of hunters. Crix backed away from the corridor door, whispering, "They're inside." Theros grabbed his sidearm, though everyone knew it wouldn't make much difference. He looked toward the maintenance tunnel, where faint light flickered. "What are you doing, human?" he shouted. The response came calm and certain. "Finishing what they started when they pushed me." The corridor doors hissed open, and the boarding lights flashed in. Silhouettes filled the entrance, tall, armored figures, faceless and silent. They scanned the room, then stepped forward in unison. In the tunnel, the human connected the final circuit. Power surged through the ship, humming like a heartbeat returning to life. They glanced up at the status panel, eyes reflecting the faint blue glow. The engines were ready, but so was something else. Outside, the attacking ships adjusted formation, unaware of what was coming. Inside, every being could feel it. The tension so heavy it almost hurt to breathe. The air crackled with static, lights flickering faster, like the ship itself was waiting for a signal. And in that moment, the human whispered to no one in particular, "Now it's my turn." The hum of the engines deepened, vibrating through the floor plates like a pulse coming alive. Every panel flickered with sudden power, systems rebooting one by one. The crew gasped as lights flared to life again, but the relief didn't last. The readings on the console made no sense. Energy spikes far beyond safe levels, navigation systems reconfiguring themselves. Crix stared at the data streaming across the screen, antenna twitching. "That's not a restart," they whispered. "That's a rewrite." The human emerged from the maintenance tunnel, covered in grease and sweat, their expression calm but intense. Theros spun on them, demanding answers. "What did you do?" "I didn't do this," the human said quietly, scanning the controls. "The ship did." Before Theros could respond, a sharp tone cut through the air. The ship's AI, silent until now, spoke in a low, unfamiliar voice. "Core override acknowledged. Human command priority detected. Initiating safeguard protocol." Everyone froze. No one had ever heard the AI sound like that before. The human frowned, as if recognizing something they hadn't expected to hear. "That's not possible," they murmured. "This model isn't supposed to have human priority access." Crix's eyes widened. "Wait, you think someone programmed this ship for humans?" The human's jaw tightened. "Not someone, something." Outside, the enemy ships shifted position, forming a tight perimeter. Instead of continuing their attack, they stopped firing. It was as if they were waiting, watching. The crew could feel it, that eerie calm before something irreversible. Then the main screen flickered, and a face appeared. Not alien, not mechanical, human. It was a transmission, grainy and old, a man speaking through static. "If you're seeing this," the recording said, "then the failsafe has activated. They've found you. You can't let them take the data. It isn't just information, it's the map." The crew exchanged confused looks, but the human's expression darkened. "The map to what?" Theros demanded. The recording crackled again. "The location of the first colony, the one that vanished before the Galactic Accord. Everything began there. And everything ends there. The image broke apart into noise. The silence that followed was thick. Crix turned toward the human slowly. You knew about this? I knew the stories, they said, voice low. But not that it was real. Tharos slammed a claw against the console. And now those ships out there want it. The human's gaze shifted to the viewport. The enemy ships had begun to move again, closing in, their lights pulsing in that same deliberate rhythm. They're not just after the data, the human said. They're trying to erase every trace of what we are. The AI's voice returned, calm, but cold. External boarding confirmed. Internal containment protocol active. Metal barriers began sealing across corridors, cutting off escape routes. The ship was locking itself down. Panic spread through the crew as alarms blared, the temperature dropping rapidly. Tharos turned, shouting, "Can you stop this?" The human's eyes glinted under the red light. "No," they said softly, "but I can control where it ends." The floor trembled. A low rumble echoed through the hull as the ship's engines shifted power into something deeper, something hidden. Outside, the enemy fleet adjusted, realizing too late that the human vessel wasn't running anymore. It was preparing to fight back. The human placed a hand on the console, eyes narrowing. They wanted to push it, they whispered. Now they'll see how far it goes. And somewhere in the dark, as the enemy ships drew closer, the AI's voice whispered one last line that made everyone on board freeze. Override complete. Human retaliation sequence initiated. The deck shook as the engines roared to full power, a sound deeper than thunder. Outside, the enemy fleet tightened its formation, weapons charging in unison. But instead of trying to flee, the human ship began to turn toward them, its hull glowing faintly blue from the rising energy within. The crew clung to their stations as pressure rippled through the air. It wasn't just a system surge. It felt alive, like the ship itself was waking up for the first time. Tharos shouted over the noise, "What are you doing? We can't fight that many!" The human's voice stayed steady. "We're not fighting them the way they expect." Their hand hovered above the console as the AI spoke again, its tone almost human now. "Sequence confirmed. Singularity charge at 90%. The phrase sent a shiver through the room. Crix's voice trembled. "Singularity? You're creating a collapse point. That'll destroy us all." The human turned to them with a strange calm. "It won't destroy us. It'll take us somewhere else." The lights flared blindingly bright as energy built to unbearable levels. Outside, the attacking ships opened fire, streaks of plasma crashing against the shields. The hull groaned under the impact, but the human didn't flinch. They stood rooted in front of the control panel, staring at the growing swirl of light forming outside the viewport. Space itself seemed to bend around the ship, twisting like liquid glass. "Core stabilization complete," the AI reported, awaiting final confirmation. The crew looked to the human, terrified but frozen in place. Tharos tried to grab their arm, shouting, "You'll kill us all if you're wrong." The human met his gaze, eyes steady and strangely sad. "We were already dead the moment they found us." Then, with a calm exhale, they said the words that seemed to silence everything around them. "Now you've really pushed it." In an instant, the ship erupted into motion. The singularity expanded, swallowing light, pulling everything inward. Enemy vessels tried to pull back, but their thrusters failed, caught in the gravitational tide. The human ship surged forward into the storm, engines howling as reality folded around it. For a few breathless seconds, there was only darkness, pure, crushing silence, then a sudden stillness. When the crew opened their eyes, the stars looked different. The enemy fleet was gone. The scanners showed no familiar constellations, no known coordinates. They had jumped, not through hyperspace, but through something older, deeper. The human touched the console gently. We made it, they whispered. Crick stepped forward, trembling. Where are we? The AI's voice returned, quieter now. Uncharted system. Coordinates match pre-accord records. Origin point of human expansion. The words sank in slowly. They hadn't escaped. They had arrived at the first colony. But before anyone could speak, the ship's sensors lit up again. A signal was coming from the planet below. A beacon, faint but undeniably human. Tharos stared at the readout, his disbelief turning to fear. There shouldn't be anyone left down there. The human smiled faintly, though their eyes stayed fixed on the planet. Maybe there never stopped being someone. As the ship descended toward the surface, the beacon's message began to clear through the static. It was a voice, human, calm, and unmistakably alive. If you've come this far, it said, then you already know the truth. You were never the last of us. You were the key. The crew exchanged stunned looks as the realization hit them. The enemy hadn't been chasing them to destroy the data. They'd been trying to stop it from getting here. The human leaned closer to the console, voice barely above a whisper. Looks like the story isn't over after all. And as the ship broke through the clouds of the forgotten world, 1,000 faint lights flickered to life on the surface below, signs of a civilization that everyone thought had vanished, waiting for humanity's return. The ship drifted gently through the clouds, the light from the planet's surface washing over the hull in soft gold and blue. The crew stood at the viewport in silence, watching the landscape unfold below. Cities buried beneath the sand, glimmering domes half covered in dust, and lights that flickered like old memories coming back to life. None of them spoke for a long time. After everything, the chase, the collapse, the impossible leap, they were staring at something no one thought existed anymore. Humanity's beginning. The human pilot guided the ship lower, and for the first time the air felt calm. The constant hum of tension that had followed them for so long began to fade. Crix leaned forward, eyes wide. Those structures, they look alive, they whispered. The sensors confirmed faint energy signatures, power sources that had somehow stayed active across millennia. It was as if the world had been waiting for them. Tharos exhaled slowly, setting down his weapon. We came here to trade, to survive, and somehow we found the one place everyone forgot. His voice carried a strange mix of exhaustion and awe. I guess humans really do find their way back to the start. The human didn't answer right away. They were staring at the planet's horizon, where the light grew brighter, almost as if the world itself was waking. We never stop coming back, they said quietly. No matter how far we go, something in us always remembers. The ship's AI interrupted gently. Incoming signal established, requesting permission to respond. Patch it through, the human said. A faint voice filled the cabin, older, cracked with static. To those who carry the spark, it said, welcome home. We left our world behind once, thinking we'd outgrow it. But humanity's story isn't about leaving, it's about returning. If you found this place, you are part of what was always meant to endure. The message ended, and the room fell silent again. No one dared break the quiet this time. Even Tharos, who once mocked human stubbornness, bowed his head slightly. The words hung in the air like something sacred. The human turned from the console, their expression soft but certain. We'll land near the beacon, they said. Whatever this place is, it's not just history, it's a reminder. Crix smiled faintly. A reminder of what? That when you push a human too far, the human said, you don't just get anger, you wake up everything that makes us human. The will to survive, to rebuild, to hope again. As the ship touched down on the surface, dust swirled around it like a quiet welcome. The crew stepped out, the air warm and strange, carrying the scent of rain and old earth. In the distance, faint lights moved. Figures approaching, not machines, not ghosts, People. The humans stood at the front, watching as the shapes grew clearer. Men and women, descendants of the first settlers who had never left. They smiled, lifting their hands in greeting. For a moment, no one spoke. The galaxy felt far away, the noise of war and fear forgotten. There was only the quiet heartbeat of a world rediscovered. The human took a slow breath, eyes bright with wonder. "Home," they whispered. And as the twin suns rose over the first colony, the truth became clear. Humanity had not vanished. It had been waiting, patient, enduring, unbroken. Across the stars, every species would soon hear the same message. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as survivors. And this time, when someone whispered those words, "Now you've really pushed it," the galaxy would remember exactly what that meant.